to keep our promise, to keep our community safe, say the healthy choices you're making here. And I always part of the disability support, arts, media program, health services, my family, my friends, my allies workers, to keep that promise. Just speak one voice and keep it strong, just like me.
Governor Brown needs to keep his promise to the Latterman Act, and that we need 10%.
Every human being has the right to quality of life, and nobody should be excluded from that.
Keep your promise.
Senator Bell has been our biggest champion in Sacramento. Those of you who've been in Sacramento know that Senator Bell has constantly supported our service system. As an assembly member, as a senator, he's constantly supported us. He's constantly advocated for us, and he's right now at this moment speaking on our behalf in Sacramento to make sure that we get something out of this budget. Senator Bell was supposed to be here, but because he's in Sacramento, he couldn't make it. So from Senator Bell's office, Frances Herbert has a message from Senator Bell, and she'll say a few words on his behalf. Thank you, Frances.
So I wanted to provide a brief statement from Senator Bell that he sent to me this morning. California has one of the highest caseload ratios in the nation, but spends the least on people with developmental disabilities. 15 years of inflation and the continual denial of cost of living adjustments has taken its toll, forcing the closure of care homes and programs that serve thousands of people. This year's final budget is an absolute crime. It will perpetuate the death of the Lanterman Act and put the lives of Californians with developmental disabilities at risk. Understanding the Lanterman Act is difficult, but it's about equality and freedom for people with developmental disabilities, allowing them choices through the development of individual plans. Our job in the legislature is to support the laws and protect those rights. This year's budget has room for our schools, universities, and children, and we believe there is also enough room for our most vulnerable population. This budget is not about having enough money. It's about the choices and values, how we spend our money. Nearly 70 legislators, Republicans and Democrats, support increasing DDS funding. They have signed my letter to the governor supporting a 10% increase for care providers and regional centers. As part of the budget deal, the governor and legislature agreed that funding for provider and regional center rate increases, along with some other priorities, would be considered in this special session. A 10% rate increase for regional centers and providers is a must to be part of this deal. Let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Frances. Senator Bell is talking about this act right here, the Latterman Act. For those of you who may not know, the Latterman Act is an entitlement, a state law that says every individual in the state of California has the right to receive services from the state of California. This act has been attacked many times, and without an increase, it's being attacked again. Without a new budget that provides more funding for our services, it's being attacked. Thank you, Senator Bell, for acknowledging the importance of this act right here. Our next presenter is Debbie Alice. She is the board chair of the Service Provider Advisory Committee. She's also a grandparent and has been a big advocate in helping us get a lot of these events organized, as well as getting messages to our legislators. So I think Debbie deserves a round of applause just for being a great advocate. She's been an amazing advocate. Debbie.
Thank you, Francisco. All right, we all know that why we're here, but after decades of neglect, cutback, and chronic underfunding, programs for California with developmental disabilities are on the brink of collapse. Programs are closing, services are being scaled back, and people with developmental disabilities are being put at risk. I'm one of those providers that actually had to close our doors last year because of the cuts. And we had to close because the median rate didn't work. It was really hard, all the laws that were changing to keep up with everything. We had over 100 employees we had to let go. We also had over 350 individuals that were impacted by the services that we could no longer provide. It is because of these types of being neglect. We are just on the brink of just collapsing. We're like an eggshell, and everybody's just walking on us because nobody wants to step on the eggshells. Well, they have to keep the promise. Governor Brown needs to do something. So does our legislators. They need to keep going and keep what they said they would do. And even what they said they do was less than what we were asking for. So, and the least thing they can do is also give us back the money that they saved from our community and have it come back to all of you who need these services. I just want you to know how much I just love all of you. I just want you to all know that we, San Andreas, my staff, all of the providers, all of the service coordinators, all of the board members, we love all of you, and we just really are here to make sure that we fight for you. There was a group of parents like around the 70s, and they started a whole program, and there was a film made on them, and it is called We Fight for Justice. Well, I want you to know we're back again, and now we are here to support We Fight for Justice, but most of all, we're here to make sure that the promise is kept and our services are still going to be going, and we're going to be making sure that Brown does what he promised. All right, so let's go and let's say.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. Keeping the promise is important. If you haven't seen the video, we're here to speak for justice. It's a group of parents who actually are responsible for this act. If it wasn't for those parents, this act would not exist. Our next speaker is a great gentleman, wearing shades. He's a cool dude. Anthony Rowe from Greater Opportunities.
Well, the reason we're here today is a tough one. It's really nice to see all of your faces this afternoon. You know, it's so important that we band together as a community and extend further and reach out to our loved ones, our parents, our neighbors, all the people in our lives who can help us and get our message out to Mr. Governor Jerry Brown. A promise was made. The promise was made in 1977 with the signing of the Lanterman Act that affords support and services to individuals with developmental disabilities here in California. That is the promise that is not being kept today. That is the reason why our services, your services, are in jeopardy. What are we going to do about that? We're going to fight, right? Are we going to call Mr. Jerry Brown? Are we going to send faxes to his office?
Yes!
I mean, this is beyond the 11th hour, guys. This is 11 hours, 45 minutes. We've got about 15 minutes left on the clock before we're out of the game. We can't afford to wait anymore. It's so important. The Lanterman Act itself is under attack, and we must fight back. Now, either Governor Jerry Brown doesn't understand the situation that we're in, that you're in, as recipients of services and us as service providers, but I find that hard to believe. Either he doesn't understand or he doesn't care. Well, we understand and we care, right?
Yes!
Right? So we must do everything we can do to get our message across and make sure that they keep the promise. The Lanterman Act has been under attack. It is a series of cut after cut, disregard after disregard, and with that is death by 1,000 cuts, or death by omission of support. We have to do everything we can do today to make sure that we will be here tomorrow. When I say we, I mean all of us as a community, and as a service provider, I can tell you, there are so many increasing costs that come upon us. I mean, you just heard Debbie, say that ultimately she had to close her doors because as a service provider, the rates weren't able to support the cost of providing that service to the community. Well, if not us, then who? You can't open a new service providing organization when the rates don't support it. So it's not as if they can disregard the need of the present service providers, as if new ones will pop up in their place and have the opportunity to be successful. That's not reality. So with that said, I wanted to take a brief moment and say a thank you really to all of the men and women who devote their time and dedicate their lives to providing support to our population, our community. The staff are among the many pieces of this puzzle, but they are the ones who are undercut in this process. We are in the Silicon Valley. It is very difficult for anyone to live here and make a living here on minimum wage. Am I right?
Yes.
Right? So how can we as service providers afford to pay more than minimum wage when the rates don't even keep the lights on barely? So what are we going to do?
Fight.
Fight, that's right. And we're going to do what?
Fight.
Fight and make sure they keep the promise. 10% increase to rates across the board. Well, it's not the answer, but it's a start. And again, it starts with all of you. So reach out to everyone you know, ask for their help, and ask that they reach out to Governor Jerry Brown and make sure that he and the rest of the legislators here in California keep the promise. Can I get a chance to keep the promise?
Keep the promise. Keep the promise. Keep the promise. Keep the promise. Keep the promise.
Thank you, Anthony.
Promise. Keep the 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 promise.
Anthony mentioned getting hold of the governor. Go to his website, go to his Facebook page, flood him with messages, call his office. If you get my emails, you have the link to every social media contact that we have to the governor. Get a hold of him today. Our next speaker is Chris Gianola. Chris receives services from Hope Services. Chris is an amazing young lady who has an amazing story, and she's going to share it with us right now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, keep the promise. Government Brown, do you hear us? We want you to keep the promise. We are part of California, and we need your help. We need your support. There are many of us that I'm thinking about. There are many of us who need your help. We need your help. And we need to keep the service. And we need a raise. We are asking for 10% to keep Boeing Care home. We do not want to go into an institute. We do not want to be treated like jerks. And we are American, and most of us who are disabled are voting. We are voting. I vote, and I don't like the way you're treating us. So we need your help. Keep the promise, Government Brown. We are part of California, and I also work at Target. Most of us have jobs. Who are disabled are on the board. I am on the board of Hope, and my friend Maya is on the board of Reno Center. So we don't have coffee and stay home and feel sorry for ourselves. We are out there. I have gone to grassroots. I have come, and I know Senator Bill. He is supporting us. By Government Bond, we are coming to you. We want you to listen. We want you to think about us. We support every one of us who are disabled. Support everyone. We want you to keep the promise. 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 Keep the promise.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Chris. That's great. Chris is an amazing speaker. Our next speaker is going to be Kathy McCoy. Kathy's representing San Andreas Regional Center, as well as every single service coordinator throughout the state of California and the families that they support.
Hi guys, it's nice to see everybody's happy face today. I'm so glad you came out. Okay, I know everybody hears about caseload. Well, it also equates to the workload at regional centers. When you you call your case manager, it'd be nice if you get a return call within 24 hours. Unfortunately, we have caseloads of 100 plus, some of us, and that's not possible. My caseload's 100, you know? I mean, that's just the way it works. You know, politics is a zero-sum game, right? It's not. The problem is there's winners and there's losers in every single budget cycle. We end up being on the loser end of that every single year. Now, I know that vendors have gotten one increase in the past 15 years. How can you survive on that? It's not even possible for me to understand that. I can't understand that. As a service coordinator, when we talk about services and choices, our choices are dwindling, not because we don't want to provide choice, but because the vendors can't keep in business. So therefore, we can't offer choices to our families, individuals who need those choices. So at this point, last night and this morning, the legislators have been talking all kinds of happy talk about how sad it is that the governor left us out of the budget yet again and what they want to do to support us in the future. I mean, honestly, how many of you guys have heard this story over and over and over again? Yeah. Of course, you know, I mean, we have our champions. Thank God for Senator Bell, right? Thank God for people like Senator Bell, who year after year after year talk the talk. If it wasn't for his letter and all those senators and assembly people that signed on to that, we wouldn't even have what we have right now, which is basically every assembly person and senator saying the same thing. We got left out. So now, the future, Lanterman Coalition is talking about one thing. We need our message to be real clear. This is shameful. You cannot end this budget year without responding to the needs of the developmental disabilities community. This system needs a 10% across the board increase to start a turnaround. We're not on the brink of collapse. We're in full collapse. We're in full collapse. We need it now. So please, speak, you guys. You need to call the big three. You need to call or fax the governor. You need to call or fax Assembly Member Atkins, Tony Atkins, she's a speaker, and Senator De Leon. And you have to say, we are still waiting for you to do the right thing and not end this budget session without giving the developmental disabilities community funding to keep the promise, right? We need this to continue. This has to continue. Lanterman Act is no joke. We are the only state in the union that has anything this beautiful. This is civil rights in action. We need this to continue. So what are we going to do? We're going to keep the promise. We're going to make the promise. Keep the promise. When do we want it? Keep the promise. 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 Keep the promise.
Thank you, thank you. Our last speaker is a young lady who has literally taken herself to Sacramento many times. For those of you who have never met Darcy McCann, Darcy is an amazing advocate who supports and speaks for everybody, not only in Santa Clara County, but for everybody throughout the state of California. She's gone to us to meet with legislators. She's met with the governor's office. She has done so much advocacy work. You know, it's an honor to have Darcy here today. So come on up, Darcy. Well, let's see if she can.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're all here for one thing, and that's to give a really loud message to Governor Jerry Brown that we do matter, that he must keep our promise. So many times, year after year, it's always, yes, we matter, but really, do we matter? It sure doesn't feel that way. I know that I represent people with disabilities throughout the state, and I matter, but according to Governor Brown, none of us matters right now. So we need to keep calling him, bugging his office, sending messages, faxing, anything we can do to keep the message that we do matter. No matter what type of disability you have, we matter. Our service system is on the brink of collapse. We've already collapsed. So what are we going to do about it? The only thing we can do is just keep speaking our voice that yes, we matter.
Our life matters. Our life matters. Our life matters. Our life matters. Here's our promise. 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 Here's our promise.
Okay, how many of you heard that? Before we end today, I just want to thank everybody for coming out. It's important that we continue to contact our legislators. It's important that we continue to contact those people who make policy. And right now, it's obvious that we need to contact the governor's office. He needs to know from us that we matter, that we have a voice, and that this entitlement was a promise made years ago that provides individuals with developmental disabilities a promise. And we need to make sure that he remembers to keep the promise. Thank you very much. And on that, we'll end it with a chant.
Hi, I'm Toby. What's your name?
My name's Anna Wang.
So you like being here at the rally?
I have to because our life matters. People with disabilities' lives matters. And Governor Brown is really letting us down by not giving us any funding to help us pay for the caregivers that make our life possible.
Is that important to keep our promise?
Yes, he should keep the promise to support people with disabilities. I am a parent of a child with special needs, and definitely he would need the support to live his life. And they can't abandon us like that. All the people, the agencies cannot pay for people who take care of our kids. And so they have to give regional center funding so that they can do that support.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
And today.
I feel great. There's a lot of people that came out today to support our service system. It's important that people continue to make noise, that people continue to get the message across, especially now to the governor, that he needs to support our service system.
Did he keep the promise?
I hope he keeps the promise. I know with us, we came out here to make sure that we get him the message that he needs to keep the promise. Now, it's up to him to keep the promise.
Do you think Jerry Brown will see this for our services?
Well, our hope is that he does. We know that he knows about us. We know that he knows, and we have him, we are on his radar. But now he has to do something. He has to make a decision that supports our service system. And right now, he's not doing that. And so we need to continue to make noise so that he keeps the promise.
So how about the Letterman Act?
The Letterman Act is important. It's important that people understand that. Without the Letterman Act, a lot of these services wouldn't exist. The Letterman Act is a law and entitlement that says people with developmental disabilities in California have a right to receive services. Without the Letterman Act, we don't have any services.
So what happens if we don't have services?
Well, it's an easy response. Is there's a lot of people who won't get services. A lot of people will be at home and in jeopardy, really.
Is part of our communities?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Part of our community?
Yes, because they are a part of our community, and they have a right to be in the community, and programs and services support them with that.
Is this like part of our disabilities?
Yes, exactly. It is part of our core culture, regardless if a person has a disability or not, the color of their skin, their economic background, their cultural background. Everybody is a part of our communities.
Do you think the whole people, the whole state will see that?
I hope so.
Well, I feel an honor for everyone to just be here.
Yes, and I do too. And I thank you, Toby, for being here. We thank you for getting the message across. And with video and with voice and with social media, we're hoping that what happened today gets out there, especially to the governor.
And we're going to keep that happening, right?
We're going to keep that happening as long as you're there helping us support it.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Toby, for having me.